Hi everyone, welcome back for another couple of chapters of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Again, we're going to be reading chapters 19 and 20, so let's get started. Chapter 19, The Inventing Room, Everlasting Gobstoppers and Hair Toffee. When Mr. Wonka shouted, "Stop the boat," the Oompa Loompas jammed their oars into the river and backed water furiously, and the boat stopped. The Oompa Loompas guided the boat alongside the red door. On the door it said, "Inventing Room, Private, Keep Out." Mr. Wonka took a key from his pocket, leaned over the side of the boat and put the key in the keyhole. "This is the most important room in the entire factory," he said. "All my most secret inventions are cooking and simmering in here. Old Ficklegrubber would give his front teeth to be allowed inside here for just 3 minutes. So would Prodnose and Slugworth and all the other rotten chocolate makers. But now, listen to me. I want no messing about when you go in, no touching, no meddling, and no tasting. Is that agreed?" Yes, the children said. "We won't touch a thing." Up to now, Mr. Wonka said, and nobody else, not even Oompa Loompa, had been allowed. In here, he opened the door and stepped out of the boat into the room. The 4 children and their parents all scrambled after him. "Don't touch," shouted Mr. Wonka, "and don't knock anything over." Charlie Bucket stared around the gigantic room in which he now found himself. The place was like a witch's kitchen. All about him black metal pots were boiling and bubbling on huge stoves, and kettles were hissing and pans were sizzling, and strange iron machines were clanking and spluttering, and there were pipes running all over the ceiling and the walls and the whole place was filled with smoke and steam, and delicious rich smells. Mr. Wonka himself had suddenly become even more excited than usual, and anyone could see that this was the room he loved best of all. He was hopping about the saucepans and machines like a child among his Christmas presents, not knowing to which to look at first. He lifted the lid from a huge pot and took a sniff. Then he rushed over and dipped a finger into a barrel and sticky yellow stuff and had a taste. Then he skipped across to one of the machines and turned half a dozen knobs this way and that. Then he peered anxiously through a glass door of our gigantic oven, rubbing his hands and cackling with delight at what he saw. Then he ran over to another machine, a small shiny affair that kept going, and every time it went, a large green marble dropped out of it into a basket onto the floor. At least it looked like a marble. "Everlasting Gobstoppers," cried Mr. Wonka proudly. "They're completely new. I'm inventing them for children who are given very little pocket money. You can even put an everlasting gobstopper in your mouth, and you can suck it and suck it and suck it and suck it, and it will never get any smaller." "It's like gum," cried Violet Brigard. "It is not like gum," Mr. Wonka said. "Gum is for chewing, and if you tried chewing one of these gobstoppers here, you'd break your teeth off. And they never get any smaller. They never disappear. Never. At least, I don't think they do. There's one of them being tested this very moment in the testing room next door. And Oompa Loompa is sucking it. He's been sucking it for nearly a year now without stopping. And it's still just as good as ever. Now, over here," Mr. Wonka went on, skipping excitedly across the room in the opposite direction. "Over here I'm inventing a completely new line of Toffies." He stopped beside a large saucepan. The saucepan was full of a thick, gooey, purplish treacle, boiling and bubbling. By standing on his toes, little Charlie could just see it. "That's hair toffee," cried Mr. Wonka. "You can eat just one tiny bit of that in exactly half an hour. A brand new, luscious, thick, silky, beautiful crop of hair will start growing all over the top of your head, and a moustache. And a beard." "A beard?" cried Veruca Salt. "Who wants a beard, for heaven's sake?" "It wouldn't suit you very well," said Mr. Wonka. "But unfortunately the mixture is not quite right yet. I've got it too strong. It works too well. I tried it on an Oompa Loompa yesterday in the testing room, and immediately a huge black beard started shooting out of its chin, and the beard grew so fast that soon it was trailing all over the floor in a thick, hairy carpet. It was going faster than he could cut it. In the end, we had to use a lawnmower to keep it in check. But I'll get the mixture right soon, and when I do, Then there'll be no excuse any more for little boys and girls going about with bald heads. But Mr. Wonka, said Mike TV, little boys and girls never do go about with... Don't argue with me, child. Please don't argue, cried Mr. Wonka. It's such a waste of precious time. Now, over here, if you will all step this way, I will show you something that I am terrifically proud of. Oh, do be careful. Don't knock anything over. Stand back. Chapter 20. The Great Gum Machine. Mr. Wonka led the party over to a gigantic machine that stood in the very centre of the inventing room. It was a mounting of gleaming metal that towered high above the children and their parents. Out of the very top of it there sprouted hundreds and hundreds of thin glass tubes, and the glass tubes all curled downwards and came together in a bunch, and hung suspended over an enormous round tub as big as a bath. Here we go, cried Mr. Wonka as he pressed 3 different buttons on the side of the machine. A second later, a mighty rumbling sound came from inside it, and the whole machine began to shake most frighteningly, and steam began hissing out of it all over. And then suddenly the watchers noticed that runny stuff was pouring down the inside of hundreds of little glass tubes and squirting into a great tub below. And in every single tube the runny stuff was of a different colour. So that's all the colours of the rainbow, and many others as well, come sloshing and splashing into the tub. It was a lovely sight, and when the tub was nearly full, Mr. Wonka pressed another button, and immediately the runny stuff disappeared, and a whizzing, whirling noise took its place, and then a giant whizzer started whizzing round inside the enormous tub, mixing up all the other different coloured liquids like an ice cream soda. Gradually the mixture became to froth. It became frothier and frothier. It turned from blue to white to green to brown to yellow, then back to blue again. Watch, said Mr. Wonka. Click went the machine, and the whizzer stopped whizzing. And now there came a sort of sucking noise, and very quickly all the blue frothy mixture in the huge basin was sucked back into the stomach of the machine. There was a moment of silence. Then a few queer rumblings were heard. Then silence again. Then suddenly the machine let out a monstrous, mighty groan, and at the same moment a tiny drawer, no bigger than a drawer in a slot machine, popped out of the side of the machine, and in the drawer there lay something small, thin and grey, that everyone thought it must be a mistake. The thing looked like a little strip of grey cardboard. The children and their parents stared at the little grey strip lying in the drawer. You mean that's all? Said Mike TV, disgusted. That's all, answered Mr. Wonka, gazing proudly at the result. Don't you know what it is? There was a pause, and suddenly Violet Bigard, the silly gum-chewing girl, let out a yell of excitement. By gum, it's gum, she shrieked. It's a stick of chewing gum. Right you are, said Mr. Wonka, slapping Violet hard on the back. It's a stick of gum. It's the stick of the most amazing, fabulous and sensational gum in the world. Bless me, and that's the end of the chapter. It means it's time for some questions. Are we ready? Okay. What room in Mr. Wonka's factory is the most coveted by evil chocolate makers? So which one of the rooms want all the evil chocolate makers wants to go inside? Is it the chocolate room, the recipe vault, the inventing room, or the chamber of secrets? Which room do the evil chocolate makers want to go inside? It was the inventing room. Well done. The chamber of secrets is from Harry Potter. What are the children forbidden to do when they enter the inventing room? Touch anything, taste anything, disturb the inventors, or take photos. So what are they not allowed to do in that inventing room? They're not allowed to taste anything, correct? And it was not knock anything over. So if you put touch anything, I'll allow you to have that as well. Okay, question 3. What does the inventing room remind Charlie of? Is it a mad scientist laboratory, a witch's kitchen, a treasure room, or his reoccurring dream? What does the inventing room remind Charlie of? It reminds him of a witch's kitchen because it had all the different pots and pans and saucepans. Well done. Number 4. What new inventions or invention did those Mr. Wonka introduce in the inventing room? Everlasting Gobstoppers, hair toffee, a blue chewing gum, or all of the above? What does Mr. Wonka introduce? So there were 2 things. The everlasting gobstopper that one of the Oompa Loompas has been chewing for nearly a year, and hair toffee. What does Mr. Wonka's special toffee induce? So what does it make? Does it make facial hair growth, bright ideas, operatic singing, or superhuman strength? Of course, it was the facial hair growth. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's couple of chapters, and I'll see you again on Friday for 2 more.